dive into it head first. Even if you're working for free, the experience you get from it is invaluable. And more metaphysically, you're literally doing the work. The money will come. You're putting in the work first. You have to put the work in, and you have to become as good as you can in the process. And it's not only skill level and what you know, it is how you make your clients feel.
If you're a chef and you're thinking about how to venture into the private chef space, how to set yourself up for success from resume to first interactions with your clients, as well as succeeding at the job, our one-on-one coaching got you covered. Go to www.privatechef.cc and connect with me. Decades of experience can be your support to seize the next private chef opportunity. Welcome to the Private Chef Podcast, serving the 1%. I'm your host, Hennche, and on our show we speak to the best chefs, how they honed in on their skills to excel in the industry, and what it takes to work as a private chef for some of the most exclusive clients in the world. Welcome to the Private Chef Podcast. I'm your host, Hennche. Today I'm excited to introduce Mohamed Elzomor, the co-founder of Nines, a household management software and service that helps families and family offices manage properties, people, and projects all in one place. Before starting Nines, Mohamed was a highly sought-after private fitness trainer, gaining insight into the challenges his ultra-high net worth clients faced. Now with Nines, he helps private service professionals deliver service with ease. We also spoke about the essential personality traits one needs to have to excel in this world of private service. Mohamed, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Hannes. It's great to meet you, and it's a pleasure to be on your show.
You're very welcome. So, what was your initial first kind of exposure to the world of private service?
I had an interesting view of that world, and not necessarily from within the private service roles that you would typically expect. Prior to where I am now with running Nines, I was a personal trainer, and I trained in Manhattan, and I trained the billionaires, the CEOs, the Victoria's Secret models, celebrities, 5 different royal families. So I was very well versed with this audience, and I did that for nearly 15 years. I worked out of the Four Seasons and the Peninsula Hotel. There's a place called the Core Club. It's like a private members club between Park and Madison. Is on 55th, and like places like that changed my life because it opened up entirely new doors and worlds that you're just not exposed to on a regular basis. I'm a kid from Queens, New York. I started as a personal trainer at like New York Sports Club. It wasn't the same audience as the Core Club, but obviously that allowed for me to end up where I am today in some crazy manner. I ended up, in private service, but in a very, very different version of private service, very different definition. So yeah, that's how my first exposure to this world and this audience happened.
What would you say were the things that caught you off guard? Maybe going from a normal gym with like the average individual to going to this kind of elite clientele. Like, what are the things that you weren't quite expecting?
I'd say a couple of things. I'd say these might contradict each other, but I would say first, they're just people like you and I. Fully understanding that and believing that allows for you to not get nervous, not slip up, because they're just another person. Treat them with respect like you would anyone else. The differences make how wealthy they are, how many homes they own. So I always knew that, but I think really beginning to understand it on that level, it allows you to communicate and feel more comfortable with that audience. So I think it didn't take me necessarily off guard, but it's something that I had kept front of mind when beginning to work with this audience. Now, this is the thing that might contradict that. They're not just everyday people, so you have to remember that as well. So sometimes, and I learned this because I saw another trainer go through this situation, the Core Club. What you might say to person A, who is not a multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire, like just throwing a very neutral comment out there, like, oh, I need to figure out a way to get investors for this idea that I have. This is very, very blunt, but like even something less obvious, You say that in front of a wealthy person, that wall will come up immediately. So like things that you think might not seem so bad because they're constantly being sold to. We were talking about this before we started the episode. They have a wall, and if they
Hmm.
sense that someone might be trying to use them, you are now blacklisted out of that person's circle of influence. So I learned that be very careful of what you say and how you say it, because even if you don't have bad intentions, it might be taken the wrong way. So think about the words that you're using when speaking to people, and that goes across the board, wealthy or not wealthy, but especially in that audience. Just tread carefully. Be very delicate in how you behave and compose yourself.
Hmm. I
Um,
think that this is a very valuable lesson. That, like, if I think of the people that didn't gain longevity in certain positions, it's usually the ones that made the family feel like they're taking advantage of having a credit card or something that they can use for expenses, or even simple things like the nanny ordering the most expensive items in the hotel that we stayed at, would tick off the family in a way that is hard to impossible to recover from.
correct, correct. And those are small things that then any probably didn't even think twice. Like, oh, this looks really yummy. Let me order that. It's like,
Yeah,
well,
she
it's
was
not your
lobster
money.
and caviar. When else do I get to eat that?
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, those are all great examples of what not to do when the opportunity arises.
Yeah, I think this is actually such a beautiful point you're making. The communication is, you're dealing with a human, and I think on a human level they're normal people. Like, they have their own set of insecurities, they have their own set of concerns, but then from a different perspective, which I think Jim Rohn usually distincts between, on kind of the spiritual level everybody is equal, but in the marketplace they're not. And
Hmm.
so while they are normal people, they also are highly aware that they carry different weight in the marketplace, and that their time is incredibly valuable compared to other people's time
Sure.
based on how they add value to the world. And I think what you mentioned about being very careful with the words you're using, that anything that asks for anything
Yeah.
is an immediate red flag, just based on that just about anybody wants to ask. And I think for private service professional, the takeaway here is what we said earlier: is add value first always. Like, go out of your way to add value. And I think the people that have true longevity and in a different approach will get maybe to a different point in their relationship, but it comes with building a lot of trust and adding a lot of value first.
Correct. For sure. Yeah, you don't ask for things. That's a big no-no as well. Um, but then also, you don't get things unless you ask for them. So there's also that saying. So you have to
I
learn how
was
to
just about
balance.
to ask you, so how did you go about the things that you do have to ask for, even as a personal trainer? Like, some of it might even be like, you have to in some way establish that they have to stick to the routine, because otherwise it's impossible for you to get results for them.
Sure. Yeah, they have to be committed. And that's something that you could definitely ask for because they want you to ask for that. Otherwise, what are they paying you for if there's not accountability there? I guess as a personal trainer, there's not much to ask for. Like I'm sure, and I've seen it countless times, and I see trainers who are successful and those who are not. And I was able to build myself from like literally nothing to one of the top trainers in the world relative to like the clientele that I had. There are those who will ask for like favors or introductions or connections, and that's a very very slippery slope because if the client knows you need that connection just because you very indirectly spoke about what you're doing, because when you're a trainer, the trainer and client relationship is very intimate and you become friends. So it's okay to share goals and dreams and stuff like that. I deal with my clients all the time, but I didn't make it seem like my goal, my dream depends on whether you can help me get
Yeah.
there. But sometimes they're going to want to help you. They like you, as you mentioned, if they trust you, if they want to, when they want to help, they will offer it. Don't ask for it, and don't try to be sneaky and set them up so that they offer it to you, because then they'll see right through that as well. So, like you mentioned, just build a relationship, be honest, be trustworthy, be direct, and then good things happen, right? And that's kind of how the origin story of Nines was. A client wanting to help. And then, you know, the company was created, but I didn't ask for it. It just happened. And that's over a nice, long relationship that had been built.
Yeah. And the way I like to think about that, it's planting seeds more than forcing anything. So you're planting seeds with good, and basically you let the goodwill compound throughout your career, and that kind of has to grow for itself in an organic way. You cannot ever force it because then the wall will come up, as you said earlier.
Yeah, and not to go off tangent, but like I truly believe in the law of attraction and like the law of karma. Whatever you put in comes right back out. And more specifically, like the law of visualization, you have to really see what you want in the future, but you have to see it in your mind now, and you have to see it in such a detailed manner that your subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between whether it's a fake image or it's an actual memory. And like when I started those exercises, I read a book called The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, and that's when I was first, started hearing about this like mumbo jumbo, like Disney magic kind of thing. I'm like, this can't be real. But I used that book. I literally said, I want to train billionaires. I want to train CEOs. I want to train royal families. I want to train princesses, celebrities. My friends are like, what are you smoking? You work at Lucille Roberts, so you're not going to be training princesses anytime soon. But because I took those exercises and I took them to heart, and I said, listen, I got nothing to lose. Like, this is what I want. I'm going to go and I'm going to visualize it. I'm going to write it out. And then also, you don't just sit there and dream about it. You put in the action, but you put in the action with such belief and such enthusiasm and such positivity that those are the seeds that you're planting into the world, into the matrix, into the universe. And something good is bound to happen, right? But if you're working hard and you're like, what am I working hard for? You're not expecting much from that, then the world is going to give you more of what you're expecting. So if you put in the work and you believe and you expect things to work out, then it's one way or another. Even if you try 10 different things to make something happen and they all fail, that 11th door opens for you that you didn't even expect, you didn't even know was there. And that's been the culmination of my life, really, since I read that book. If I hadn't read that book, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Hmm. How would you say the level of service is different that you initially provided? Or are you saying you were always striving for a level of excellence where the natural outcome was serving princesses and billionaires rather than maybe staying in the gym in Queens?
I think it's a combination of both things. You have to want to be there, and then also logically speaking, you have to be good enough to be there.
Yeah.
How do you get good enough to get to that level? So yeah, you go and you get certificates, you go and you learn as much as you can. Because also the law of attraction, I ended up, this might be a little extreme, but if your subconscious mind, if you want to be fully booked 9 sessions a day, every day, visualizing it is great, but actually doing it is a whole other level. And I did it for free. I literally piled up as many free sessions as I could, and I just worked for free. Like 9 sessions a day, 7 of them are unpaid. They were people who worked in the gym. They were members in the gym who weren't going to pay, but they would take up my free offer for sure. And I essentially trained my brain and my body that this is what my days look like. And then one day you look back and you're like, oh, I have 9 sessions today, but only 4 of them are unpaid. And then one day it's like, I don't have any more free sessions. I am fully booked. So dive into it head first. Even if you're working for free, the experience you get from it is invaluable. And, more metaphysically, you're literally doing the work. The money will come. You're putting in the work first. So that was huge for me to get to where, I was giving out $25 hour-long sessions at Queens College, where I used to go, to charging $250 a half hour, being flown on private jets. You have to put the work in, and you have to become as good as you can in the process. And I think it's not just being really good and being really book smart. Obviously, this is a podcast for chefs, so like personal training, not so much. But it's not only skill level and what you know; it is how you make your clients feel throughout that process. That is actually more important. Don't hurt your clients. Know enough, but be fun to be around. Encourage them. Become their friend. It's a very interesting dynamic, right? When you have a client, because who else can tell that person to get on the floor and give them 20? They boss 50,000 employees around usually, but when they meet you, you're telling them what to do for an hour. So it is a very special type of relationship that they probably don't have with anyone else, right? If they're seeing me 3 hours a week, right, three 1 hour sessions, I might be seeing them more than their own spouse is seeing them. That's a
Hmm.
special relationship that this person has with you, that you have with them, that is unlike any other. So, yeah, to answer your question, very long winded. Put in the work, learn as much as you can, but it's also your personality is going to take you much further than just the things you know.
This is actually something that I keep reiterating to chefs too. And this is one of the reasons there's this big chicken and the egg thing in private service. Like you need to have experience in order to get hired, but nobody hires you if you don't have experience.
Yeah.
And it's around what you just said. It's like, do you have the personality to be around people? And like, if you're easy to be around, you're a lot more likely to get hired than if you're the best chef, but you're just like so hard to be around because
Yeah.
you're like just not a pleasant human being. And it's such a big component of working in private service, whether you're a trainer or a chef. But we don't get to tell them to do 20.
No. You get to tell them to try that soup. Tell me if you like it.
But how important, since we're talking about training, how important for the success of your outcomes in terms of training and body physique is the diet?
More important than the workout itself. I used to speak one on one with their private chefs and have a full understanding of what they're eating, when they're eating it, how much of everything, if the client is that locked in. Because we could work out every day, but if you're not sleeping, number one, most importantly, because that's when you rebuild your muscle, and you're not eating the right stuff, the right amount of protein, obviously eliminating the alcohol and the sugar and all the crap that we shouldn't have in our diet, you're not going to see the biggest results, the biggest change in your body type. But if you lock in on the diet and you're sleeping, so your recovery is on point, then then you're making the most of all that sweat and not blood but tears that you might be having from really hard workouts. The diet is the abs are made in the kitchen, as they say.
Can't outwork a bad diet, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's not going to go very very far.
And what do you think usually is success in that? Is that a chef that knows how to dial in recipes that are still tasty, but basically deliver the nutrient density and value that you're looking for? Or does it usually come from very committed clients who are like, okay, I'll eat just about anything as long as we're getting it straight here?
I think the former, because you know motivation only lasts so long. Dedication is going to get you across the finish line. So if you're motivated, like I'm going to eat chicken breast with nothing on it and like raw broccoli, at some point you're going to be like, I can't do this anymore. So if you can find something that is it's still enjoyable, you look forward to it, it's tasty. Yeah, it's not as tasty as the stuff that's covered in cheese and tons of carbs and yummy bread, but it's tasty enough. Then there's a higher likelihood that you're going to actually maintain this for a long term, you know, for a long period of time. Um, but you can do both. Sometimes people, depending on the personality type, they're either all or nothing. So they don't want to be in between. They want as clean as possible. They don't care what it tastes like. Let's get to that first stage. And then perhaps after that, you can get a little more lenient with the ingredients and the amount of sugar and other stuff like that.
Mhm.
Uh, but my personal recommendation is find something that's still yummy, but is not completely killing your progress.
Yeah. This is so interesting for me as a chef. It's actually one of the components I like the most is when, food is not just entertainment, but it's also giving you a foundation of health and rejuvenation to some degree. And this is something I always loved when I was connected with trainers or nutritionists, and we could really dial in on a goal together, and we could actually transform somebody's health and how they feel on a daily basis and make them
Absolutely.
feel more energetic. And that usually translates into just being a more joyful human being for everybody that they're impacting. And that's how I look at impacting people is like, if you get to serve somebody on that level who, as you said, might have 50,000 employees, you're impacting quite a lot of families through that. Like if you can inspire somebody to have a healthier diet or have a healthier lifestyle, they might to some degree implement that in their corporate structure.
Yeah. Yeah. Or even just less directly, there's a ripple effect. Even getting them in a better mood will change how they communicate with their peers, their employees. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
And that's also it's one of the things like if I think about food safety, I'm like if it's in question whether a food is safe, like you definitely throw it out, because the value of their time, the value of their mood, the value of their health is so high. It's like, if
Yeah,
it's in question, you don't serve it, and
correct.
you want to make sure that you give them the best possible feel, because that is how they go out, and because of the statue they have in society and the resources they have, they will affect the world on a larger magnitude than, like maybe myself when I'm a teenager growing up somewhere.
Sure. Yeah. And the last thing you want for someone to get food poisoning. So always play it safe.
Yes, definitely.
Mm.
So what were some of the most interesting engagements that you had in private service? You did mention, people were flying you out on private jet, which is just like, myself, I came from middle class family. That initially really blew my mind, that somebody would fly me in somewhere to cook dinner for them and their family, or to dial in on their goals. And what was that experience like for you?
Yeah. So I think when you think of private service, I guess I do. I think of like the very high, ultra high net worth crowd. Not even celebrities much, but I guess
Mhm.
they also have EAs and stuff, but not to the level that like a big hedge fund guy or a founder of a massive company would have.
Sorry for the interruption. We will be right back. And if you're a chef thinking about venturing into the private chef space, this is for you. We coach you on how to set yourself up for success, from resume to first interactions with your clients, as well as succeeding at the job. Our one-on-one coaching got you covered. Go to www.privatechef.cc and connect with me. Decades of experience can be your support to seize the next private chef opportunity.
Training celebrities was always fun for me because I was encouraged to like share their picture, and that helped me build my brand. Back when verifications on Instagram actually meant something, like having that blue check next to the name was huge, massive. You couldn't pay for that. Now you can, $15 a month. But that was always a lot of fun, like training. Like we trained Jamie Foxx and training TV stars and movie stars. And for me, I remember the first time I ever trained a billionaire, Mark Lazar. I love the man. I ended up training his daughter as well, and we still talk to this day. I remember going to his home in the Hamptons, and he's like, "Come look at my fish pond." And we're driving around the golf cart, and that was just like a special moment because that was my first time seeing something so grand and so exquisite, and like allowed me to grow my dreams a little bigger as well, like seeing what's out there. So those experiences, as corny as it may sound, that hold a special place in my heart. Obviously, flying on private jets, that's always fun. A client from France found me on Instagram, flew me out to France, put me up in a 5-star hotel for 2 weeks. Some days I didn't even work. I wanted to go train, but no one was available. So that's special, right? And you don't get the opportunity to do that in many other industries, many other types of jobs. So those are always the nice perks. One of my clients had front row seats to the Knicks, the Rangers, like pretty much every team, like 6 different teams. And he would just give me tickets constantly. So like I became the guy who would bring my friends, like, let's go, we got front row seats to the Yankee game. It was unbelievable. So a lot of really cool perks and a lot of, I can't even go down the line of how many stories of awesome things I was able to experience. But for me, like one of the best experiences was with Mark Laurie. So like clients hire me to get into better shape, to look better. Like I trained over 25 Victoria's Secret models. That was cool. I was getting them ready for the fashion show. Like I like having those goals and those different challenges, if you will. But like Mark Laurie was a special challenge because he hadn't run in 25 years. He's well known for starting diapers.com. He sold it to Amazon for $500 million. Then he started jet.com. He sold it to Walmart $3.5 billion later. He became a billionaire in the process. Dude has the Midas touch. He's an incredible human being and the heart of gold as well. He hired me to get him ready for the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine. I don't know if you're familiar with football, but it's not a typical request I get from clients who are in their late 40s. Long story short, he hired me to get him ready for the 40-yard dash, to make him faster. And then we were also racing against Jerry Rice, who's like the Hall of Fame wide receiver from the San Francisco 49ers, with a $250,000 bet on the line. So Mark Laurie had bet the owner of the 76ers, Michael Rubin, then he was the owner, $250,000 that we could beat Jerry Rice. So like imagine the pressure I'm feeling as a personal trainer that if we don't win this race against a Hall of Famer who doesn't want to lose at anything, right? Playing ping pong, he probably will play you to the death. A little bit of pressure, but we trained for 10 months. Like we went really intense, super dialed in, and we won. We won by half of a tenth of a second.
But you won.
But we won. And that was an incredible story in itself, right? I went to the NFL Combine. Listen, I played football growing up. My dream was to play in the NFL. I literally would give my training clients away for 2 months at a time to go to the regional combine and try out and, try to live my dream. Obviously, I'm not playing in the NFL now, so it didn't work out. But that little part of my life prepared me for this challenge. So, hey, get me ready for the 40-yard dash. Great. I literally trained for that exact thing. Like, I'm your guy. And then the nice part of that story is that happened right before COVID. Then COVID hit. I trained the wealthiest people on the planet, at least in Manhattan. And within like 48 hours, everyone picked up and left. It was like Wuhan and Manhattan were the two worst places to be for a little while in the beginning of the pandemic. And I was training Mark Laurie virtually, and he made a joke that turned into a business idea, calls me 2 days later and says, I want you to run this company. Here's your co-founder, Yako, who you've never met before. Do a FaceTime, see if you guys get along. We did, clearly. And then him and his co-founder of Jet.com each put in $500,000 and said, go start a business, go try to solve a problem. That's how my experience in training and dealing with this audience and all of 15 years culminated into one opportunity, that, which back to what we were saying earlier, he gave it to me. But when you get the opportunities, you run with them and you do everything in your power to make that person proud and make them think, I made the right decision, investing time and money into an individual.
And the cool thing is, it all starts with adding value and being a pleasant person to be around.
Correct.
Like whether it's the tickets you got for the games, like let's say you would just do a great job, but you wouldn't be pleasant to be around. Nobody would give you a ticket.
Probably not.
Yeah, and nobody would give you a chance to build something, and give you some of their money and to do something. So I think it's such a crucial piece to the puzzle to be just a genuine human being that's easy to be around.
Yeah, agreed. It's changed my life. So hopefully I'm genuine and I'm happy and I'm nice to be around. But that's what I strive for, at least.
Yeah. So how is that working out?
Incredible. We started Nines as a staffing concept, which looked a little bit different of a business model. We were like a subscription. And we hired the staff as W-2 employees. So the chef, the housekeeper, whoever it might be, was Nine's W-2 employee. And like we advocated for benefits and we wanted to like set a standard. Did that for a year. Realized it wasn't scalable. It is not an easy job to find a perfect match for somebody, which makes it hard to scale, obviously. But the silver lining in that first year was, what we noticed was, even billionaires are managing their homes with binders. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way, because we were looking for a way for us to do that since we were doing a lot of management in-house. So we started looking around. We're like, there's no really great solution for managing luxury properties and all the assets and all the staff and all the dynamic pieces of a complex household, which all of our clients have pretty complex households. So then we went and we poached engineers from Walmart who helped Mark Laurie build Jet.com, which sold for $3 billion. We need people with experience. So within a few months, we had our MVP out. We started getting a few clients on, because we have a big Rolodex or a big network of people in this audience, friends, even just going to my old clients, try this, tell me what you think. Is it great? Is it not great? What would you want added to it? And within a few months, we had an MVP out. Fast forward to today, we have over 210 clients around the world. Majority are single families, so that's what we built the software for. But, we have 4 of the top 10 Forbes families using Nines to manage their properties. So I'm happy with where we're at. I think we're trending in the right direction, but I also truly believe that there are tens of thousands of families out there who could use something like this. So the goal is just to keep adding value, keep creating resources to help people, whether or not they're using our software. We've got a podcast, we've got a community, we've got blogs and stories, and we're doing workshops. We're doing everything we can to help in whatever manner the family or the people who work for them need help. And if they need the software, then great. We can be here for that too.
Hmm. I love the way you go about that. It's like, hey, we're coming from this genuine angle of we want to add value first. And then if we can help you by you using our software, great.
Yeah. That's how I think that's how good businesses are built. Right. And we literally were talking about this before we jumped on. You have to add as much value as possible. And then when they remember that you were that person, you were that company that helped them answer a question or get from A to Z, then maybe down the road they speak nicely of you to a friend. Maybe that friend becomes a lead, right? And that's why I gave all those free sessions as well, because like, you may never even have the money to afford me later, but now there's goodwill. You know,
Hmm.
whether you bring it back, I think the universe will bring it back in some manner. So we do whatever we can to
Yeah.
be as simple as possible.
Yeah, and there's also something that I keep telling chefs. I'm like, if you're starting out, that you have scarcity because you don't know anybody, nobody knows the value of you, what you might be able to provide. Just go out and start networking, and even like if you know somebody who owns 10 Airbnbs, offer them to cook for them for free. Give them and their wife a candlelight dinner or something. Give them an experience.
Yeah,
This is something that will help you hone in your skill set, create an experience which you haven't maybe gotten the chance to yet too many times because you haven't gotten the jobs yet. So
yeah,
it's really what you did there is like train your brain. So this is the normal state of the future. And it's like, hey,
exactly.
this is how we're operating in the future. We will be busy and
Yeah,
we will create exceptional experiences for people.
yeah,
And at the same time, you slowly learn the difference between a paying client and a non-paying client and kind of make the distinction between high value clients who value your service to a degree where you might end up getting paid $250 for half an hour. This is one of the funniest thing I realized when I first came to New York City. I was working at one of the best restaurants in the world, Restaurant Danielle, and I had a skill set that was already very good and well refined. But because of how I was executing the skill set, it had a different value
yeah,
because the restaurant was actually capturing the majority of the financial value rather than myself. But then by learning that lesson and using it to position myself differently, and eventually I would be able to speak to clients on my own behalf, and then I could capture the value. And this is really the journey, whether it's in personal training or for private chefs.
correct. Agreed. Especially, that's a great analogy because in personal training, you go from working at the clubs to eventually having your own brand, your own business. Like I was getting all my clients through Instagram. I was going to their homes. But if you don't know how to build that and capture the sales and essentially run as a business, then
Yeah.
yeah, you're only going to go so far.
So how does Nine help estate managers serve private chefs better? Because this is also something that I've experienced working in private homes. If the home doesn't run well, if people don't know what their position is, if they don't know what they're supposed to do, it always reflects in the overall operation.
Yeah,
It's like a house that's run well makes everybody's life and job easier, whether it's the principals or the people working in it.
correct. You hit it on the head. So the idea is if there is better communication, if there is a seamless way of sharing information and finding information without it, being owned by one person and in one person's head or in some binder that's underneath the kitchen counter, if you are operating in the 21st century and you have a way of quickly understanding what needs to be done, when it has to get done, how it needs to get done, you're allowing for less mistakes to happen, right? Because mistakes happen. But when you have to look in 7 different locations for information and people are not on the same page, a lot more mistakes happen. And that's how people lose their jobs. That's how people quit because they're just burnt out because
Yeah.
the workplace is not, it's stressful because of the lack of tools to make things streamlined. So to your question, to be more exact, like how does the estate manager use knives essentially to bring value to the chef or any other position for that matter? What we noticed is that people had spreadsheets, Word documents, notes on their phones, binders, information floating in people's heads. The goal is to get it into one place. That solves a lot of problems right off the bat, and it's not that much to ask for. As I said earlier, pizza places have software. How are you not having software for a multi-million-dollar home and sometimes hundreds of thousands, if not more, in payroll? So right there, if I have to figure out who to call when the fridge stops working, I just go to the fridge's page. it's common sense, right? I can see who I'm supposed to call. I can see who I called last time. I can have a warranty for the fridge there, and that's just not just for the appliances and the systems in the home. That goes for the residents as well. If I go to the residents page, I should know how they like their coffee made. I should see if they have allergies, if they have dietary restrictions, if they have preferences that I should be aware of. I can keep documentation on that particular person that's more relevant for the personal assistant. Like, here's their insurance card, here's their driver's license. But for a chef, if let's say the family likes to entertain and they have, Penelope as a guest a couple of times a year, I want to know what Penelope's allergies are. I want to know if we served her the fish last time she came and if she liked it, right? I want to have that kind of history because if you serve the wrong thing at a dinner, that might ruin the entire experience. So the
Yeah.
idea of capturing that, knowing where to look for it, because it's common sense. You want to learn about this guest, go to the guest page. You'll see more information about it. You're not questioning what binder it might be in or what spreadsheet it might be in. That is huge. Now I don't have to go ask somebody. I don't have to text somebody to find the information. I'm not winging it like some people do. I know exactly where to go to find the information I need. And then, like, maybe you want to keep recipes there. Maybe you want to keep menus there. Maybe you want to keep pictures of what the meals are supposed to look like, a list of ingredients, a shopping list to know what to go buy on a particular day. And you can check those things off. You can send it to somebody. It does a lot. I don't want to go into a full blown demo,
Hmm.
but there's a lot of different ways of making sure that people have the information they need when they need it, and a way of communicating back and forth within the software and not having that get lost in a long WhatsApp thread.
Yeah. And all of what you just mentioned is so relevant to the private chef position. Like if I think of everything that I've been through, I've stepped into households where all the information walked out with the previous employees.
Happen.
And it's very taxing on everybody involved because you always need to get a fresh download if the favorite recipes walk out the door, or or just the regular cadence of things or routine, or and especially when you have like seasonal homes, sometimes there's new markets and things. And so it's, once the knowledge is downloaded from somebody, come what may, it's there. And I think it's very valuable to find a good home for that, because one of the things that I used to do when I would transition out of positions, I would make a Google Doc or a doc that literally has pictures, an entire folder of like, hey, this is what casual breakfast looks like. This is what a more formal breakfast looks like. This is what we were serving at the poolside. This is what we were serving, maybe in the Caribbean versus the Hamptons. This is
Yeah.
what we were serving in town, and all of that was structured by me in a Google Doc.
Yeah.
And if then I shared it with the principal or the assistant, it might still not reach the next chef.
Yeah. And it goes, there's a great example, and it goes even beyond that. How do they like to be served? What
Yeah.
should you do? What should you not do? Do they want them to be more talkative when they put the plates down? And you can get very detailed. And our audience, as I'm sure you know, they want what they want, right? So knowing that down to the
Mhm.
T, down to the details, that's what makes an experience great.
Yeah, it's so true. And the interesting thing is that sometimes I think it's part of their success. It's being very particular and raising the standard continuously usually makes people that can create exceptional organizations.
Yes.
But it's at the same time, it's part of the challenge of working for them, because it's like this continuously dialing in on the details. And like if you get something wrong, it's usually not okay. It's not like, no big deal today.
Right.
It's like, why haven't you gotten this right?
Yeah, it's a less forgiving world, the world of private service. That is for sure.
Yeah.
Mm.
And I think this is where a good system and good communication really dials in, because and I loved how you framed it earlier. Mistakes will happen, but it's like, how can we greatly reduce them and really thrive for exceptionalism to be the standard?
Yeah, yeah. That's what they're expecting of us, right? They're paying a good amount of money for a beautiful home. They're paying a good amount of money for all the items in it and people who are helping run those things. They're expecting the Four Seasons on a regular basis. And I'll tell you one thing: the Four Seasons is not operating off of notepads. They've got software, so if you want to make it easier for yourself to deliver that 5-star experience, you want to
Yeah.
have a tool that allows you to do so.
And this is also something I learned. Like if you look at how the best brands in the world, like even whether it's Four Seasons or the Marriott, like they have systems and procedures. And even when it comes to soft skills, they're like, okay, you acknowledge every single individual, even if you don't service them right then and there, but you make sure they feel acknowledged and seen.
Yeah,
And again, it's what you said earlier. Part of excellent service is being aware of how you make people feel.
yeah. That's like probably the perfect summary of how to make someone feel special and how to make that perfect experience. They have to feel seen. That's why it's like know their first name. That's one of the things that people would have to memorize when they started working at the core club. They expected the front desk to know every single person that walked in, and they had to greet them by their first name. There was like a couple of thousand members at that club, so that's a lot to ask for. But eventually, they're high standards, obviously, but the best of the best could do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's also what the private service industry boils down to. It's you have to want to be one of the best and you have to become exceptional at something. And I think the first thing to master is really soft skills and systems.
Yeah.
And then you fill in the blank whether you are an excellent personal trainer or a chef or a good driver.
Right.
But those two first components, you can't they're non-negotiable. They have to be there in private service.
Right. Regardless of whatever niche you're in private service.
Yeah.
Mm.
So what's next for Nines? How do you plan on helping more family offices, families, and estate managers?
It's a great question. So we're constantly speaking to our audience, whether they're the clients or the leads, and understanding what else would they like to see, like what else do they need to have, what other pain points do you have that need to be solved that we are not currently solving for. And so one thing that's really cool is soon, by the end of the summer, probably early Q3, we'll have the ability to pay vendors through Nines. So you could pay all your vendors, you can see how much you're spending on all the ingredients for dinner or whatever, if you're using a card for it. For our luxury property management audience, and like we have some fractional estate managers that have multiple clients and they have an account with Nines, they have the ability to send invoices out. So we want to bring that budgeting piece into Nines. I think that's important to have integrations to QuickBooks and Sage Intacct and other accounting tools. AI will be amazing in Nines. Right now, we're figuring out how to make that possible because we know who our audience is, and for that reason, our security is insane. So even as a co-founder, I cannot see the data in our clients' accounts. That's unlike most software companies. I figured they don't want us rummaging through their assets on the back end. So the idea is, how do I give this information to AI so it can do what it does? I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't feed the information to a third party. But soon, hopefully in the coming months, there will be the advancement in technology where you can use AI in a closed environment. And when that
Yeah.
happens, like I want Nines to tell you if it's going to start raining at location number 3. And if it is, with one button, you can start a workflow and tell Maria, go check all the sunroofs, make sure they're closed. And Michael, bring that into the house. Normally, an estate manager would have to call 6 different people or whatever it might be to get those things done. Now the software knows that's what has to happen when it rains, and you can just tap once and have it happen automatically. So one of a gazillion examples when it comes to how we can incorporate AI, but I'm very excited for that in the future as well.
Hmm. I wonder if principals, and I mean, this is probably easier for the kind of public facing ones to some degree, where you can generate a language model based on who they are as a personality and their preferences, kind of merging the knowledge you have with Nines. And instead of me having to speak to them and extract their preferences and knowledge, you can, as a service professional, interact with the language model, and it gives you answers like, hey, how do you like to have these things served? And it's beyond just a manual. It's like actually responsive.
It's like pulling their brain into the software. I mean, that'd be fantastic. It's quite an idea.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
It goes on the list on our roadmap. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go on an AI tangent right now, but I think it's very incredibly interesting what can be done there, and the same is actually true for personal training, and I see chefs using it to accelerate the creativity around menu building, especially around dietary needs.
Interesting.
Like
Yeah, so true.
if you have certain benchmarks to hit, you can they're not great yet. It's very infant stage. Sometimes the responses are off. Sometimes even the nutritional values are off. But it's something that I'm sure surely gets better very quickly.
Yeah, it's a breakneck speed how advanced AI is getting. I just saw earlier this morning videos. I think it's Sora or perhaps another image creator, video creator. You just type in text, and we're in a stage in humanity that we won't know what's real and what's not. So it's kind of scary, but absolutely, you'll have a lot of pros and cons when it comes to this. But it's incredible what AI can do.
Yeah. Well, Mohammed, this has been super interesting. I would like you to speak a little bit more about EaseMaker community and
Yeah.
how that has played out and the kind of connections that are being made in the community.
Yeah, so we created EaseMakers around the same time that we started building the Nines software because we wanted to figure out other ways to be useful and be helpful. And for us, the audience that we focus on is the estate manager audience, the house manager, the personal assistant, the ones who are managing the homes and they have that managerial position. There are many chefs that I know that are actually they're like chef and they're also house manager, so they wear
Yeah.
both hats. And so it's a community for estate managers and house managers. No vendors, no principals, no recruiters, no people from other positions. So unfortunately, no chefs unless they're also estate managers. But that's our way of really keeping it very niche, and they can communicate with each other, not feel like they're being watched by their superiors or by people who might work for them underneath them on their team, and ask for career advice, ask for vendor recommendations, and it's been very useful. We have we're close to 900 members around the world. We're like 896 or something, all who work for the 0.0001% of the population. And if, for Nines, obviously it's helpful because even though we don't talk about Nines in there because we're technically a vendor, and I want to honor that line that we put in the sand, people eventually find out like who started EaseMakers. Oh, Nines did. Great, let's go learn what Nines does. So I think it's good for business in that sense because people eventually be aware that we exist. But even if that doesn't happen, it doesn't matter. It's become so useful for these people to say, what, my principal's asking me to go pick up his new pet tiger, and I got to figure out how to build, a home for it in the backyard. Whatever random crazy thing they were asked to do, somebody probably was already asked that same question.
Yeah.
This is the other side of the world. But that is invaluable advice that you're not going to find on Facebook or on Google or whatever it might be, because it's such a private world. And we know that the world of estate managers and house managers is a very isolating position. I've met estate managers who didn't even know that they were estate managers, never even heard of the term. And like, no, you are an estate manager. You're managing like 6 properties for your client. You're an estate manager. So they can't even count 5 other estate managers on their hands. Now they have access to hundreds of others. So I think it's been very useful for the community and for the industry as a whole.
Hmm. Yeah, there's so many funny, like when you said the tiger example, I was thinking of something else, which is like there's the world of bonsai trees, right?
Yeah,
And one of the principals sent me to a bonsai nursery once, and I looked at it. I'm like, this is so niche. Like it's in the middle of nowhere, somewhere off the road in Florida, and they're selling like $25,000 trees.
yeah, they're like this big.
And then when once you get into that, you're like, how can I find out more about what you said? Like, I
Yeah,
want to have a pet tiger, or I want to have that bonsai tree. And
yeah,
the funny thing is, within a community of 900 estate managers, chances are somebody already had to fulfill something of that specific request.
correct.
It's like these odd requests. I'm like, I don't even know where to start here.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where do I even begin? And so that the ease makers for our community ends up being that first point of let's start, drop it in here and see where we go from here.
Mhm. And I think it also speaks to the quality of communication tools we have today. Like if you think about how slow information used to travel and
Yeah,
how locally specific it would travel. And
yeah,
now, you can really interact with estate managers or chefs all over the world. And you can really make best practices go kind of viral within the community rather soon. And it really changes the game. And I think it also levels the playing field in a way that people have access to best practices more than they ever had in history. And it also speaks to how Nine can elevate that in individual homes or estates, because communication leads to better service. Like if we all have the information and we're on the same page, it just helps provide excellent service.
Yeah, it's that was well said, right? Without communication, it doesn't matter if you are working in a multi-million dollar home or you're on a sports team. You're not gonna find success like you hope to if everyone's not on the same page.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, what are you currently visualizing when it comes to like your personal success and the success of Nines for the next couple of years?
Personal success. It's very much tied in with my success in my company, but also just my family. I want to enjoy every moment that I have on this earth and milk it as much as I can. My kids are young. I have two girls, 7 and 3. Um, I find the most joy in watching them grow up and trying to provide a life for them that perhaps I didn't have as a kid. Like my parents weren't necessarily super wealthy, but we were the farthest thing from that. But I never felt that growing up. I always felt that kind of love. So I focus on trying to do my best to run a company and still be there for my family, be as present as possible. So that's one thing I always think about. I always make sure that I'm putting in just as much time on one end as I am on the other. And then from like a business perspective, I'd love to grow Nines and pun intended, make it a household name. I think if you are managing a home, it should have something like Nines. It doesn't have to be Nines, but like Nines. I think that the software solution that can solve those issues is better than what most families are using currently, which is causing a lot of pain points. So I told you we have over 200 clients, but I think we can get to 2,000, 20,000. I think there's enough need out there. And if we keep doing what we're doing and learning and pivoting and adding and just being innovative, we can get to a really, really great place and hopefully change many lives, right? Families that have a lot of money, they build these family offices, and the family offices really focus on just the money, the transfer of the
Mhm.
money, the growth of the money, the protection of the money. But if your investment goes up or down by 1 or 2%, it's not going to change that person's life. But if the way things are happening and operating in their home, if it's not where it should be and it's causing daily stress, that actually has a very big impact on that person's life. We want to
Mhm.
be able to change that piece. We don't have to worry about the financials. You have experts for that. Let's make sure that you are living day to day. And as our tagline says, that you are living with ease.
Mhm. I love that. And what I also love is it's at the same time taking care of the community of people that work in private service, because I've seen the difference between a well-run household and a household that is somewhat being micromanaged because the communication isn't there, the tools are not there, kind of the backlog isn't there to actually see like, hey, how has this been done in the past? What does
Yep.
success look like? And whenever that was defined and when the systems and processes were in place,
Yeah,
I must say, even from a private chef perspective, it's a lot more pleasant to work there.
absolutely. Yeah, you keep your
So
best people if you don't burn them out in the process.
yes. And so thanks for that. Thanks for creating a platform for that. Because at
Thank
the
you.
end of the day, if you a healthy longevity where the knowledge stays in and gets shared through a good platform, that makes everybody's life easier. And
Yep,
so
agreed.
thanks for making it easier.
Thank you.
Where can people connect with you, EaseMakers or Nines?
Yeah, so our website is ninesliving.com. You could always reach out to me directly, Mohamed, Mohamed, at ninesliving.com. You can go to our website and find out more about what we can do to help, whether it's the software, we have the community, we've got the podcast, we have a lot of really good resources on there that could be helpful for whatever the needs might be for the family. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. So whatever way you find me, hopefully we can chat and I can be of help.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us at the Private Chef podcast. If you know any highly skilled chefs that want to take their life to the next level, make sure to share this podcast with them. And if you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe and check out our upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.